All right, dude. We are so back. Um, let's see. Well, we have a few things that we can do today. Actually, I don't know what we don't have a few things to do today. Now that I think about it, what we're gonna be doing is just reacting to some video because I forgot to react to some yesterday, so I need some content for later this afternoon. So let's react to some videos and see what's going on. Just got some things going on. All right. All right. Let's see. Got the headphones on. Everything is good. All right. Let's get started. So this video, I think looks pretty cool.
Grammarly Pro has seriously changed the terrible.
Let me change this a little bit. All right, that's good. But I don't know what's happening. All right. That's not good. What's fucking like that? Is that better? That's better. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So we're going to be reacting to how Finland became the world's happiest country.
Look at this miserable, terrible, awful country. I would hate to live here. Wait, no, that's Canada. Look at this cold, dark, isolated country. I would also hate to live here. Oh, wait,
That's
this
Finland.
is apparently the happiest country on Earth, Finland. This is the happiest? Can you imagine how miserable the rest of the world must be? And they're the happiest by a pretty wide margin. Here's the rest of the list, and then BAM!
Wow.
Finland jumps way ahead of Denmark to
first.
first place. So what can we learn from Finland for us non-Finns to be happy too? Let's look for some clues so we can stop
whole
crying and maybe
society's happy.
cheer up for once. Are they happy from their climate? Now you might be thinking, what are you talking about? Of course it's not their climate. This country is full of blizzards, rain, permanent nighttime, at least long winter nights in the
Permanent
south,
nighttime?
and mosquitoes. So many mosquitoes.
Oh my
But
God.
out of the top 10 happiest countries on earth, pretty much all of them are cold. The happiest hot country is Australia, and it's all the way down at 11th. Maybe there's something to a cold breeze to make someone happy. But our theory is not always true. Hot Costa Rica is happier than lukewarm Britain, and boiling Saudi Arabia is happier than hot Italy. So even though the weather might not influence happiness that much, the environment might. Finland is a wooded country. It's got a lot of bush. A whole 2/3 of the country is forest. That might have been relevant in the 1800s, but it's the 2000s now. Most people don't live in the woods. They live in cities. At least 85% of Finns do. But hold up, look
Really?
at these pictures of their cities. Why are there trees? Why is there water? Cities are supposed to look like this. Road, stores, skyscrapers, road, more road, smog, road. It's not supposed to have nature,
no.
but the average Finnish city uses 30 to 40% of its space for what it calls green space, including Helsinki's 52 nature reserves, Tampere's green shorelines, and Jyväskylä's green ring. Finnish residents
nice,
even
though.
say that their number one priority for their cities is transportation, like literally everyone else on Earth. But their number two priority is proximity to nature. It also helps that Finnish cities are some of the least densely populated in Europe, and none have a population over 1 million. So nature is always near to them.
So you can have a whole city that's not over 1 million, and that's their main cities. But there's so much green that it kind of doesn't seem like you're in the city, but you are. That's so cool because in New York it's just straight concrete. If you look all around you, skyscraper, 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 and you have to walk purposefully. You will have to walk purposefully. You will actually have to try to find green in New York City or Chicago or any of these cities if you actually want to see some nature. Not like Finland. Finland actually has green all around their cities. That's nice. They get to touch grass.
Nice. That seems like a good way to be happy. Could it be their culture? At over 90% Finnish, 60% Lutheran, and small percent Sami in the north, Finland is quite homogeneous. They have a culture of education and innovation, with most people having a bachelor's degree and having a 100% literacy rate. Not a single
100%
person
literacy
can't
rate.
read. I don't know how much I believe that, considering their language looks like... They also have an
No way. That is actually a good achievement because we saw another video in India. Like 75% of their people could not read. Like they were illiterate, so they would use signs. That is fucking insane. 75% of people don't know how to read or write. but Finland has a 100% literacy. That's a big step up for Finland.
Egalitarian culture that shows up particularly well in its work. You know, flat organization, autonomous decision making, strong work benefits, and the average work week only being 35 hours long. Just don't show up late. They'll beat the out of you if you do. Showing up late would probably break their trust, and Finns have built their society very trusting. Maybe the cold and 6 centuries of foreign rule forced the Finns to rely on their neighbor, can't do much alone when outside looks like this, and can't go alone when your Swedish ruler drags you into another war. Or maybe they're just trusting because of the low crime rates and economic security the Finns have. So could it be security that makes the Finns so happy? Usually worrying about fighting a war or having your house robbed when you're gone or stepping outside and getting immediately shot is not great for your mental health. And Finland is a very safe and secure country.
Right.
Having their crime rate since the 90s, having a 0.2% poverty rate, 100% electricity access, and a very long life expectancy.
Dude, Finland sounds like the place to live if you want to live long and happy, dude. No crime rate whatsoever. Less than 0.2% crime rate. And poverty. What did he say? Poverty?
Poverty rate?
Yeah. Less than 0.2% poverty rate. Finland might be something to look into if you want to live there, because yeah, Finland might be a place that you want. Holy fuck. Finland might be a place that you should look into if you want to live a happy life, dude. They have very good cities, from what I'm hearing. All of their people are happy. There's absolutely no poverty going around, so there's not going to be any homeless people out on the streets trying to beg you for some money or just selling drugs, I'm guessing. Their people are super nice from what I'm hearing. And the best part is out there is very low crime, so that's very good. You can walk around and be happy that your schools are not gonna get fucking shot up like in America. You can send your kids to school and they'll come back.
100% electricity access and a very long life expectancy.
82
Their biggest
years.
crime contributing to that tiny rate? It was traffic offenses. Demographically, they're
God,
also fairly
traffic,
secure at
that's
5.5 million people, expected to fall to around 5 million by 2100. That's not too big a drop, not like some of the drops in population other European nations are expected to
20
face.
million?
It'll be hard on the economy, but relatively small to make a relatively happy time. Geopolitically, too, they're in a secure region. They're tucked safely inside the European Union for a free market, coddled by NATO for free defense, and all their neighbors are rich and stable. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany, maybe Estonia, and oh, right, Russia too. Dealing with the Russians has always been high on the Finnish concerns list. They've always had to balance between the West and Russia. After all, Russia would love a port in Helsinki, and the Finns are tiny compared to the Russians. They would get annihilated by them, right? Well, Exhibit 1, no. And Exhibit 2, also no. The Russians probably wouldn't annihilate the Finns, but they've shown they might still try. So in 2022, Finland applied to join NATO just for that extra layer of security. And there's another aspect of security, economic security. Does money really solve happiness? Well, I have two things to say. One, Finland wasn't always rich. They used to be a backwater, a sludge water, a stick in the mud nobody cared about for most of history. And two, yes, money does make you happy, so this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Just kidding. So back to the real economy. For most of history, Finland was poor. I'm talking trenches poor. In a time when the standard of living was pretty much equal to how much your family could farm, this wintry landscape wasn't exactly the richest. It wasn't the freest either, being under Swedish rule until 1809 and then Russian rule until 1917 when they had that whole revolution. Although they generally had a great amount of autonomy to focus on whatever they wanted. So the law, money, banking, and integrity have been stable for centuries, developing trust. This is great news for developing the economy because the rest of it wasn't so great.
Booking.com has all kinds of stays. because a romantic hotel works for some.
In terms of natural resources, Finland pretty much only had two: water and wood. Can't easily export water, at least without exporting food through virtual water, so wood was their moneymaker for most of history. Or, I guess, pulp, paper, peat, parchment, print, you name it. In fact, the whole reason they even started to industrialize in the 1800s was to build sawmills to meet new Russian lumber demand. And by the time of the World Wars, their wood phase wasn't over. Wood products made up 4/5 of their exports, 1/3 of their industry, and 1/2 of their jobs, along with agriculture. The wood trade only deepened the balancing act between Western Europe and Russia. Do we industrialize like these fellows and become filthy rich, or do we keep chopping trees for the Russians and become stinking rich? Well, they had no time to think about that because the Russians invaded them in 1939. The Winter War might have prevented a communist government, but it also meant they lost nearly 70,000 men, 10% of their territory, and were forced to pay reparations. Bummer. So during the Cold War, not wanting to repeat that whole mess again, the Finns officially stayed neutral, although definitely leaned more to the west than the east from this sour relationship. They stayed out of NATO, stayed out of the EEC, and stayed out of the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. Sure, they still sold timber to the West and slowly started the Soviet trade back up again too, getting much of their energy from them, but they invested that money back to make machines. Elevators, ships, and paper machines. They started manufacturing them and selling them to the Soviets. So from their new wealth, they decided to try to fit in with the other Scandinavians and try out the Nordic welfare model. Education for all, social care, healthcare, maternity leave, blah blah. And they continued this slow and gradual path to richness, emphasizing education and innovation above all to make a heavily research and development based economy.
Dude, I love that about Finland. They have like universal healthcare, so a lot of their people get healthcare even if you don't have it. But the problem with Finland is that if they do have those type of systems, then their taxes are like through the fucking roof. They're like 20-30%. So that you can have that type of government that you can actually live peacefully. So that you can have that type of government so that you can actually live peacefully. But it's one of the downsides that you won't really keep all of your money that you're making. But then again, it is one of the happiest nations, so I'm guessing people are okay with it.
Yeah, all nice. Until the Soviets collapsed in the 1990s. So that means their trade with them just fell dramatically, and I guess that means their currency just collapsed, which, wait, that means their banks, which were already deep in debt, just collapsed, and Finland was hit with the biggest depression it's ever had, as everyone decided now was not a good time to invest in anything. They recovered by the 2000s, but they pretty much gave up paper. It was all innovation now. You might have even heard of some Finnish tech creations: Nokia, Linux, the first internet browser, SMS, basically texting, Angry Birds, and Clash of Clans. All this made with a tiny population. The new Finland is booming, economically secure.
Finland made Clash of Clans? That doesn't sound right. There's no way that's right. I have to look this up. I can't go on without looking this up. No way, dude. Did Finland make Clash of Clans? Yes, Clash of Clans was developed and published by Supercell, a mobile game company based in Helsinki, Finland. So Clash Royale, Brawl Stars, and Boom Beach are all inventions from Finland. That's amazing, dude. Fuck yeah, Finland. You made an amazing game.
And on the cutting edge of technology. But if there's one thing you should take away from this, it's that there wasn't one moment Finland became rich. It was really a build-up from stable institutions of business over 150 years. So is it welfare that makes them so happy? Perhaps the security it brings them makes them worry a lot less. But how do they even afford it? Well, Finland is not Norway. The Norwegian government gets nearly half of its revenue from oil money. Finland doesn't have this luxury. And the average Norwegian is almost twice as rich as the average Finn, so they've got a lot more revenue to tax. Okay. Finland has to go to those industries that were slowly built over 150 years and tax them for its revenue. Finland has one of the highest tax burdens on Earth. Number 2 for personal income at almost 57%, and top 10 in sales tax at nearly 25%. But luckily,
56% tax on everything. So let's say you work for $15 an hour. Let's just say that's just how it is. You're actually getting paid $7 an hour because the other half is going to the government. Holy shit, dude. No wonder they're able to pay for welfare for the people, dude. And 24% sales tax. So let's say you buy something at $10. It's $1. It's $12.50 now because of the tax of sales. And this is pretty much with everything, dude. Holy shit, they get taxed the fuck out of them. Yeah, I don't know about living in Finland now. I kind of like to keep my money. But then again, fucking the US, New York is like, what, 24%? 8% sales tax, stuff like that?
For the Finns, their government also has a fairly competent accounting department. Every electoral term, the government is given pretty strict spending limits that they have to stick to. It's not every year, it's every government. This means they've usually ended up with a 2 to 3% surplus, and although they did get into some serious debt during their depression in the 90s, they ended up balancing it back out with their 2000s boom and then deficit again with 2008. But as their population ages, shrinks, and takes that tax money back through pensions, they've had to go back to this deficit spending, which is threatening their Nordic welfare way of life and could scare investment. Well, what are they getting for all this spending though? Pensions, free education, unemployment benefits, healthcare, family benefits, state subsidized housing, government loans on housing, and of course the training needed to deliver these services.
Wait, free schooling? So you can go to college for free? Is that what I'm hearing? Because I think that might be worth it, to be honest. Let me search that up. Can you go to college for free in Finland? Yes, in many cases you can go to college for free in Finland, but it depends on your background. If you're a citizen of the European Union, country, Switzerland, public university in Finland don't charge you tuition. So you can be living in Spain, Portugal, any of the European Union countries, and you will not get charged for going to school there. A doctorate program is usually free for everyone regardless of nationality. Holy fuck, dude. Yeah, their nation's succeeding because they don't pay for tuition. Everybody's entitled to go get an education and find themselves some type of fucking career path if they want to. They don't have to worry about not working. No, they don't have to worry about paying $50,000 in tuition, so that's why they're fucking happy. Over here in America, if you have $100,000 in student loans, you're pretty much fucked for the next 20 to 30 years. It's like taking a house mortgage. But over there, they get pensions, great fucking security, free schooling. But then again, it is a 54% taxed nation, so I don't know. There are ups and downs, you know, but I think it's actually pretty cool that they're doing that because that will boost their economy over time massively. Damn, dude.
Sounds pretty nice to me. It also helps you can actually trust that your government will get these services.
I lost a lot of weight recently, and none of my clothes fit right anymore. But my Stitch Fix stylist, Stephanie, she nailed it. Let me
to you. In a lot of less developed nice to me. It also helps you could actually trust that your government will get these services to you. In a lot of less developed nations, your tax bill will come, you'll wait for the new services you'll get, and keep waiting, and keep waiting, and keep waiting, and they never seem to come. Trusting that the government won't screw you when you give them 57% of your income is pretty important to feel secure.
Yeah.
So it's up to you personally to decide if you would take this deal, but taking it doesn't seem to make them any sadder. Okay, that's way too much about this happy, jolly, jovial nation. Let's talk about their problems. First is obviously their shrinking population threatening their whole welfare model, bringing rising debt and falling investment along with it. Second, they have a housing crisis. House prices are climbing at a pretty scary rate. But tell me which developed nation isn't facing a housing crisis, am I right?
Yeah, honestly.
I wish I could afford a house. Third, the whole Russia situation isn't getting any friendlier right now, and it sucks considering Russia was a huge supplier of energy to them. When they got cut off from Russian gas, electricity prices rose almost 50% in 1 year.
Damn.
They've had to get some coal plants back online to meet demand, and it doesn't help that 30% of their electricity comes from wood still. Jeez, wood? Someone help Finland get out of the 1730s with their wood-burning
yeah,
plant.
sucks.
Get them some oil, uranium, at least a wind turbine. Fourth, sure, Finland is happy on the aggregate, but a lot of Finns are still sad. Finland has 1.2 times the rate of mental illness than the EU and are 66% more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol than their European counterparts. It could be from social exclusion, especially among lower classes, a stereotypically isolationist culture, or simply just a bigger drinking culture in Finland, especially of hard liquor. And fifth and finally, two of their main
Like vodka.
industries, paper and Nokia, Apple destroyed both of those. But they're still quite diversified and complex. So to be happy, some keys are transparency, security, money, but most importantly, trust. Trust in your government, neighbors, businesses, schools, I don't know, trust in your dog. Trust that in 5 years from now, you'll also be in a comfortable position, and if anything happens to you, you can trust someone will help you. Trust. Trust me, it's what made Finland happy.
Part of this video was sponsored by Squarespace.
Look at this miserable...
Dude, that was an amazing video. That makes me want to go and actually kind of live in Finland. Because I know they have like, their problems, but if you do have some type of online income, you could probably find a way around not paying taxes, to be honest. If you set up a company in a different like U.S. state, and you move to Finland, I think that you will be probably able to get away with that. And actually live a happy life where people are actually happy. And the people are actually nice. It's a secure country. But, yeah, their economy is kind of going downhill in a way if they rely on those things of wood and the other services. But overall, it still sounds like an amazing nation that growing up you will feel happy to be in, except that there's always like winters and stuff like that. But besides that, if you can get around the fact that if you can get around the fact that it's gonna be cold for most of the year, you'll probably be very happy, to be honest. All right, stop recording that right now. All right. Oh my god. Go on to the next video. Damn, we only have time for one more video. Alright, so we're going to be watching how Venezuela was destroyed by Husser.
Venezuela, today known for their arepa, guitars, and beauty. And also for their cripplingly awful economy, civil violence, and mass exodus outside the nation. Today, Venezuela is not doing so good by most metrics. The average Venezuelan is poor, with around 85% of the country living in poverty, and hyperinflation has ruined their currency, with the people using bills as anything but money.
Dude, they're fucking using money as probably fucking toilet paper because it's fucking useless how much money they have. It's pretty much just paper at that point. And 85% of their population is living broke. Like they have no, they don't have enough. Like they don't have enough money for food, water, simple things to live. Yeah, Venezuela needs to, I don't know, some change needs to happen in Venezuela. I don't know how they actually get through their nation. And I don't know what their president is doing.
Half the country is unemployed. It's the third worst country to do business in, and is ranked the highest on the misery index throughout the last decade. But Venezuela used to be...
They're the highest in misery. This is a fucking failing nation. If your whole population is living broke, and all of them have a miserable life. Like, where's their government? What are they even doing? They used to be like a massively rich country.
be one of the richest countries on earth. In the 70s, it had one of the highest GDP per capita on the planet. So what went wrong? Or more realistically, was that just a fluke and was Venezuela always poor? This is the story of the Venezuelan downfall. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. What he found was a bunch of land. Virgin land, one might say, and I mean a lot of it. He may have not realized it, but he just discovered a new world full of opportunity. Also at the same time, the Spanish conquistadors had just finished up fighting the Muslims off of their peninsula back into Africa. The Spanish were a little angsty, on edge, and religiously motivated during this time. They had banned Muslims, Jews, and heretics from their country and decided to take over other people's land. Why not take over this massive continent full of natives who haven't found Jesus yet, said Spain.
Damn.
And so they did. The Spanish sailed over to the
Yeah, they did,
Americas,
though.
colonizing it for gold, glory, and God. Their main objective was to take as much gold as possible from this land without having to do much work, and also convert the natives to Christianity. The Spanish started colonizing this land in northern South America in 1522. The conquistadors acted like kings. They would exploit and defeat the natives to subjugate them to their rule. They had also brought their wealth with them, keeping any extra profit from the plantations inside of the wealthiest states, creating a Spanish ruling class with many races below them. The Spanish kind of sucked at making equal colonies. They brought racial inequality through a racial caste system they made with mestizos, mulattoes, and blacks separated, and Creoles running the nation, and economic inequality through the rich conquistadors focusing on developing themselves rather than the country. There was just too much of an incentive to take the wealth for themselves. I mean, that was the entire reason they had just sailed across the ocean in the first place. Who was the kingdom to stop them? But what exactly was this land they were colonizing? Venezuela is bounded by the Guyana Highlands to the southeast and the northern mountains in, well, the north. Venezuela was always a tropical mountainous country, making it extremely hard to develop. I mean, would you try to build here? It did end up making Venezuela a pretty safe country if you go by foreign wars. Venezuela has not been properly invaded since 1829, but as we'll see later, that definitely didn't stop violence from finding its way into the nation. As a tropical, underdeveloped nation which was built on a plantation-style economy, Venezuela pretty much only exported 4 agricultural goods: meat, coffee, cocoa, and cocaina.
Damn.
As part of the Viceroyalty of New Granada and parts of New Andalusia, this agriculture became monopolized by Spain. The Spanish only let them sell their products to Spain, which worked well for many years as the country was controlled by conquistadors who were pretending to be Spanish royalty themselves.
Dude, do they have cocaine back in the 1800s? There's no way that cocaine has been going on for that long. There's no way.
But by the late 1700s and early 1800s, the people, and especially elites, were getting ideas of freedom from Spain. The United States of America had just split themselves off from the United Kingdom, setting a precedent for an independent American state. The rich Creoles liked this idea. It's just more power and control for them over the state which they're already running every aspect of. In 1811, the First Republic of Venezuela was declared, and Venezuela was free from Spain. Wrong. Spain invaded right after, and during the following wars, a man named Simon Bolivar led his own army and declared independence again. The Second Republic of Venezuela was declared, and Venezuela was free. Wrong. In 1814, France invaded Spain and they attacked Venezuela too. But after that war in 1817, the Third Republic of Venezuela was declared, and now they were finally free. Well, actually, they were part of Gran Colombia, but in 1830 they split off and Venezuela was now actually free. It wasn't all easy though. It's estimated that around a quarter to a third of the entire nation's population died during the multiple wars for independence. But
Damn,
from the
most
ashes
of the
rose a
population
new
died.
Venezuela, one which would get rid of that colonial oppressive system which just kept the slaves and plantation workers down. Now instead of that system, they would have caudillos in charge, basically dictators who used power for their own personal gain. The power structure in Venezuela never changed post-independence, with dictators running the country like a king in power from 1830 to 1935. Some were Jose Paez, Antonio Blanco, and Juan Gomez.
Juan Gomez.
Post-independence, life in Venezuela was hard. People were poor, focusing mostly on sustenance agriculture. A civil war had killed hundreds of thousands of citizens, and all for an elite taking their hard-earned production. But all of this was about to change when Venezuela discovered something amazing. They dug underground and struck gold. black gold. Venezuela had just found oil.
Hi, I'm JT and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First,
In the early 1900s, the discovery of oil brought a huge change to Venezuela. The nation stopped its heavy reliance on agriculture and shifted to a much healthier, heavy reliance on petroleum. Venezuela decided to become a petro-state instead of a narco-state. They had their first taste of riches when during World War I, European powers and the US needed oil to make guns and shoot each other and run each other over with tanks. Oil production was booming and it continued throughout the 1920s when the US decided cars were cool and they were going to drive them absolutely everywhere. By the time Juan Gomez died in 1935, Venezuela had the highest per capita income in all of Latin America. But during this Gomez production boom, it was not all nice. Gomez was just a little bit corrupt and had used some of the new income to centralize his authority over the state, giving his allies and cronies some of the revenue for more power. They also suffered from Dutch disease since exports boomed. The Venezuelan bolivar had become much stronger in value from the extra foreign investment into that country. But that foreign investment was almost always into oil production, and a stronger currency meant that other sectors of their economy were less attractive to import, so they ended up declining. It resulted in 91% of their exports being some type of petroleum product.
Dude, honestly, if you look back at Venezuelan history, bro, they were massively involved in petroleum. Like, they control like a pretty big percentage of the oil that went out overseas to different countries, just because they had so much of it. So they were very, very profitable off of oil. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if the oil stopped or they just stopped selling it. I don't know how their entire nation went from being one of the best to now being one of the most miserable nations in Latin America.
It also neglected industrializing during this time except for the oil sector. Instead of diverting its resources into the other sectors of the economy like manufacturing and agriculture, Venezuela pumped it all into oil. They were a fully corrupt nation by the 1930s with an elite overseeing the oil production and never having developed proper institutions to guarantee the new wealth would go to something useful for the majority of the people. Much of the wealth went overseas too, with plenty foreign companies coming in since Venezuela lacked the capital to set up drilling and refining centers of their own. It ended up with 3 companies, Shell, Gulf Oil, and Standard Oil, owning 98% of the Venezuelan oil market in the 1930s. But the government didn't like that. They wanted the oil wealth to go towards their own pockets, I mean the country. So in 1943, during another World War oil boom, they signed the hydrocarbon law. All foreign companies were forced to give 50% of their profits to the Venezuelan government, and the government would promise to protect their drilling and business rights. Government revenue increased by 6 times, and they had used the new revenue to sow the oil, investing into agriculture, but it ended up failing. After the other oil boom in the 50s, life was good. An extremely high growth rate spiked Venezuela into a per capita income that of Ireland or West Germany, now the 4th highest on earth. And as a rich nation, it's time to ditch those corrupt leaders taking the people's wealth. It was time for democracy. Sure, after 1935 there were regular elections held, but coups and rigging were extremely common. After a coup regime ended in 1958, the 3 major parties of Venezuela signed the Punto Fijo Act to share power and distribute oil revenue based on how many seats they get in each election. It changed a couple of things with Venezuela's power structure. There were real elections held now, but only between 3 parties that were clearly working together. And it also caused a rise in left-wing guerrilla groups fighting for their own control, since Venezuela's major socialist party was left out of this agreement. It also changed a couple of things for the economy. This democracy, along with high oil profits, kept Venezuela throughout the 60s and early 70s rich. They had used the revenue to increase public spending such as healthcare, education, transportation, and subsidies. In 1960, Venezuela joined OPEC to control the price of oil if anything bad ever happened, and it did in 1973 when during a usual Israeli-Palestinian war, OPEC boycotted selling oil to Western nations. Oil spiked and Venezuela was booming. Maybe a little too much though, since the extra inflow of foreign money brought a boom in inflation and debt. At the same time, Carlos Perez came to power. He reinstated sow the oil policies, price controls, and most importantly, nationalized the oil industry in 1976. Well, more like 60%ing it, since the state company could partner with foreign companies as long as they owned 60% equity. Oil prices were at the highest they'd ever been in 1979 at that point. It seemed like they were only going to go up. A very healthy thing to structure your entire government revenue stream into. With
Dude, look at that big drop from the 1975 to 1980s. That was a big drop. What happened? I wonder what happened during that time that they just stopped making that much money.
about 60% of the government's income coming from oil. Surprise, prices went down. When they did, the Venezuelan government failed to keep the economy in control. Growth decreased, inflation and debt were out of control. They could no longer fund most of the government services or producer subsidies they had promised, but continued to do so since getting rid of all of them at once would likely meant a civil war. Boy, was the government shocked when that almost happened anyways during Caracazo. These were protests, riots, and violence about the awful economic situation they were in and corruption in the nation. During this time, a man named Hugo Chavez had attempted 2 coups on the government, but no big deal, they happen all the time. What was important though was when he stopped trying to coup and he ran his own party called Movement for the Fifth Republic. Hugo was anti-elite, he was populist, he was socialist, and he was determined to make a change in Venezuela.
Oh, he was socialist.
Have you ever wanted to see your home from space? With this free satellite Earth Maps tool, you can zoom.
Dude, Venezuela is one of the prime reasons why we know today that socialism. Venezuela is one of the prime reasons that now we know that socialism does not work in a nation.
Anti-corruption protests likely happened not because of the excess amount of corruption in Venezuela. No, the people were fine with that as long as they were getting paid. The protests happened because they had stopped getting that sweet, sweet oil money, turning Venezuela into prime real estate for an anti-elite, anti-inequality rhetoric. Hugo Chavez was elected in 1998, starting his Bolivarian revolution. The battle against the elites just ended up turning into his own guys becoming the new elites and himself becoming the new dictator. He kept the oil-based government revenue strategy, this time with more Chavismo flair, and along with rising prices, it seemed like Venezuela was more dependent on oil than ever. He promised populist programs such as cutting poverty by 20%, nationalization of almost everything, and lots of social welfare. Since they didn't learn their lesson about having government revenue directly linked to oil prices, Venezuela experienced many booms and recessions in the 2000s, shaking Venezuela up more, making it even more unstable to live in. One of these shaky events was in 2002. The state oil company, the PDVSA, went on strike during the winter of 2002 to 2003. The sudden drop in exports weakened the bolivar, and when around 40% of the company was fired, or more realistically ousted in a political purge, it caused a sharp drop in output, and their oil production has never ever recovered since. In 2003, Venezuela also suspended much of their foreign trade and controlled their currency's exchange value. For the first time in its history, Venezuela was unable to meet its supply contracts of petroleum to the international world. But at the same time, just after this incident, they started the PetroCaribe program to provide subsidized oil to Cuba and Caribbean countries with the same values. Gotta help the socialist brothers out, right? Even if that means running out of oil to sell and doubling your foreign debt between 2005 and 2013. Chavez was so for the people that he got rid of the corrupt elite Supreme Court and ending term limits. Term limits did not stop him from dying though. When he died in 2013, it paved the way for a new man to step in as dictator, Nicolás Maduro. By 2013, Venezuela had already fallen pretty hard economically, but when oil prices collapsed in 2014, Venezuela still had to keep their government programs without any revenue, so they printed money and went into full crisis mode. This is the modern Venezuela we're used to hearing about now. Severe hyperinflation and nationwide shortages of basic goods leading to malnutrition, poverty, and protests across the nation.
Dude. If you look at that picture on the top left, that's how much money you need to buy those 6, maybe 7 tomatoes. That's how much money you will need to bring to the market just so you can get some tomatoes. Like, that's fucking crazy. And now that they're being more fucked because their entire nation relies on the welfare
Of basic goods leading to malnutrition, poverty, and protests across the nation. The hyperinflation was so bad that money and savings practically disappeared over the year. The Venezuelans had no more hard currency. The idea that your bill will buy the same amount of goods as another bill or throughout time. Many foreign companies slow down production in the country or just straight up left. The government, to make up some lost profits, took more from the PDVSA, leading to less reinvestment into their sole source of income, with oil production slowing from over 2 million barrels a day to less than 500,000 in 4 years. And they started printing money like never before seen. It's hard to know the exact inflation rate, but some estimates are between 25,000% and 448,000% in 2017 and over 1,000,000% in 2018. Simply put, the Venezuelan bolivar was now completely worthless. It has given the Venezuelans a warped sense of money, with people choosing to hoard goods and opening up a black market for the people. It was just one disaster after another from 2013 to today. Along with a presidential crisis that may or may not turn into a civil war, the future is sure looking unstable for Venezuela. Those are some of the reasons why around 1 in every 10 Venezuelans, around 3 million people total, has packed up and left the nation. They're impoverished, it's turning more and more violent, and there's a lack of basic goods in the nation. Oh Dios mío. It's a tragic tale because Venezuela is a great country with a vibrant culture and tons of natural beauty. So at what point was the nation doomed? From the start of colonization? No, since all these other Spanish colonies are poor by world standards but not nearly as bad as Venezuela. Was it by finding oil and nationalizing it? Not necessarily. There are many nations who have made it work and have ended up quite wealthy because of their oil revenue. Was it because of Hugo and his Chavismo ways? Well, let's be honest. Chavez was elected because the Venezuelans were poor. His policies certainly didn't help the nation become richer, but he definitely didn't cause the root issues of Venezuela. No, it's more of a mix of the first two reasons. Venezuela was cursed by finding oil before they had developed democratic, pluralistic institutions. They had used the power structures of the plantation-based conquistadors, evolving it into the caudillo system with a small elite controlling most of the land. During their flirting with democracy and socialism, this structure didn't go anywhere. It just shifted which name Venezuela had and which people benefited from the oil revenue. Because they focused so heavily on oil production, they couldn't diversify. Their attempts at slowing agriculture and industry in the nation failed, and the government promised oil revenue that sometimes just did not come. They could not have made a sovereign wealth fund like other richer countries have because Venezuela was too corrupt. There was too much of an incentive to use this wealth fund for the rulers' personal gains, so it was never made. The politicians just did not trust each other enough in the nation. There's no way they would have made a multi-billion-dollar fund just sitting around in the government. So the oil revenue went directly into government spending, making it fluctuate much more than any other government's, causing the instability we see today in Venezuela. If there's any nation which gives evidence to the resource curse, it's Venezuela. Venezuela is a country that struck black gold and it cursed them to live a life of poverty and misery.
Dude, like, have you seen Venezuela's military, bro? It's a bunch of old people. And very, very old people. Like, 60, 70, sometimes 80-year-olds are still in the army because it's the only way for them to even get food. Because if they're not in there, then they're not making any type of money. They're not surviving if they just stay living in regular Venezuela. And also, what the fuck is the president of Venezuela even doing? Like, does he even like try to make an effort to improve Venezuela at this point? I can't say I have ever seen like some type of improvement coming from Venezuela. I've heard of Argentina, heard massively of El Salvador, other nations, but when it comes down to Venezuela, not one word. The only time that I heard about Venezuela was because they had the elections and they were massively rigged for Maduro. And right now, I heard of Venezuela once again because they want to get into a fight with the United States because apparently Maduro is like importing a lot of drugs to the United States, so they're trying to stop that. But I don't know, man. I don't know how you can turn around a nation like that with 8,000,000% inflation. 8,000,000% inflation. That means that people will have to work probably a whole month for $1 in America. So if you don't have relatives living outside the United States, you're pretty much fucked. You're not even gonna be able to live. Alright. Damn, that's sad. I forgot to fucking put record. No. Fuck, dude. Alright, well, I don't have time. I gotta go to class. So, I'm gonna end it there. But, yeah. Fuck, dude. How did I forget to press record? It's a rookie mistake. Alright, see you guys. And reading Sal. Hello. Now you probably already left. Damn. Short stream, but yeah, kind of have to end it short.